Welcome to the Domain Name Wire podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Alleman, and this is episode number 561. My guest on this week's show is Wade Smith, Director of Aftermarket Sales at Afternic. Today, Wade talks about the new domainnames.com initiative, how Afternic brokers follow up on leads, and he provides tips about which landers to use and how to price your domains. You'll also hear about a simple tweak to help you make more money on your lease-to-own sales. We'll chat with Wade in just a few minutes, but first, a word from our sponsor. Our sponsor this week is Sav.com and its domain name auctions. If you're looking to liquidate some of your domain names, check out Sav's auctions. I sold a few domains through Sav auctions. It was quick and easy. There was a great transfer process. If your domains are at Sav, they transfer automatically. Best of all, sellers pay just a 4% commission. Learn more and start selling your domains through Sav auctions. Go to sav.com/DNW/sell. That's sav.com/DNW/sell. Well, the big news from this past week was Ionos looking to sell Sedo and Team Internet Group entertaining any type of deal to split its company up, selling off or partnering for different pieces. You know, there's one company to blame for this fallout, and that is Google. This year, the company effectively shuttered its AdSense for Domains program that these companies relied on for the bulk of their revenue. Team Internet reported a steep drop in revenue in the first half of this year and laid off 200 employees. Sedo, on the other hand, reported huge growth of 73% the first half of this year. While some of their revenue does come from domain sales, the bulk of it comes from traffic. And this 73% increase in the first half of the year suggested that they had navigated the switch from AdSense for Domains to Google's other product, related search for content, fairly well. But two things happened in the third quarter this year. First, Google opted out the final batch of advertisers that were in their domains program. Other parking companies had reported only modest revenue declines until that last batch was opted out. While Sedo had transitioned many arbitrage companies to the RSOC product, related search for content, it still relied heavily on the domains product, especially for the millions of non-arbitrage domains parked on its platform. The second big thing that happened last quarter is that Google made changes to its RSOC product that likely negatively impacted Sedo. The precipitous decline in revenue hit the company hard. Sedo managed to almost break even on an EBITDA basis, but revenue was down 66% year over year in Q3 for the company. And since some of those changes occurred mid-quarter, the business likely deteriorated further. By putting the unit up for sale, Ionos can remove the impact from its overall reporting and push the decline into a discontinued operations line item. The pain from Google's decision will continue to reverberate around the industry, and I hope a buyer comes through for Sedo's domain brokerage business. There was a lot more news last week, including attorney John Berryhill scoring 2 reverse domain name hijacking wins. Check out those stories and more at domainnamewire.com. But now, let's chat with Wade. My guest this week is Wade Smith. He is the Director of Aftermarket Sales at GoDaddy. Wade, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Wade, first give me some background. How did you get into the domain name business?
Yeah, so I'll start with what I do today. Today, I oversee all of the Afternic inbound sales teams. That includes all the different regions around the world, APAC, EMEA, and the US. Background on where I started. I started with French Schilling back in 2012, back when the platform was called domainnameSales.com, before it was Uniregistry. I worked there for, obviously, until we were acquired by GoDaddy in 2020. I transitioned from being a domain broker with Frank into working on leadership with inside of GoDaddy. After the acquisition happened, worked very closely on the migration of Uniregistry Market into Afternic. Took on a few additional teams with inside of Afternic as well. Last year, Alan Shiflett moved over to product, which opened up some additional responsibilities where I took on the director of sales role.
Okay. So in other words, anytime someone makes an inquiry on one of our Afternic landers, that goes to someone on your team?
Yeah, that's correct. Whether the inquiry comes through one of the Afternic landers or if it's somebody that came from the side of GoDaddy, those all come to somebody that's on one of my teams.
Okay. Just to clarify, if someone does the domain buy service through GoDaddy, is that your team or is that a different team?
That is different. I mostly oversee all of the seller side, listing side of it. On the buyer side, that's a different team.
Okay. So, I think there's an important separation there. Then there's a separation between people that are working on behalf of sellers and then those working on behalf of buyers. So
We do have a line in the sand there. So that we're representing the seller, they're representing the buyer.
perfect. All right. Well, I want to talk about several things today. First of all, GoDaddy recently launched domainnames.com, which probably brings you back to your days with Frank. But tell me about how this came to be.
I keep calling it domainnamesales.com. So if I do that, please forgive me. I've said that many times in my broker days. So domainnames.com, to give you the story here, we frequently have buyers that are coming to us looking for domain names, whether they're looking for a domain name that is unattainable, it's already in use, or they're looking for one that maybe had a really high price. They had a significant budget, but they couldn't quite get to that one. So we always have buyers that are coming to us looking for ultra premium domain names and high value inventory. And then on the other side of the coin, with sellers, we frequently get sellers that are asking, hey, what could you guys do for me to build a market for my domain name? How can you guys leverage the GoDaddy brand and the credibility that it has and the reach that you guys have to try and build more of a market around our domain names? We've always left that to the boutique brokerages that are out there and never really ventured into that. But this year, we decided to put an investment into it. In the beginning of the year, we started experimenting with doing some sort of outbound initiatives, using third-party tools to see if we can source high-fit buyers for specific domain names. We had some success there to be able to generate leads and interest. And then also, we decided to use our internal reach and look at our internal customer database and say, all right, can we use our machine learning team to see if we could find high-fit customers with inside of GoDaddy that would be interested in this domain name as well? It's not a big surprise, but we did see a significantly better engagement rate through our own internal customer base by reaching out to them and trying to generate interest there. We also experimented with placing ads on platforms like X and LinkedIn, taking an individual domain name, backing it by the GoDaddy brand, giving that credibility to see, can we advertise to specific audiences, do targeted audiences for a specific domain and industry? Would that generate leads? And we were able to prove that out as well. By doing that, we were able to generate some leads and some interest in specific domain names. So we got those proof points. We did that for a while, and that allowed us to validate what we thought we could do. And domainnames.com is really just one piece of the puzzle of what we want to do with, call it high value domain names in general, and creating an ecosystem around them. So we really think that with what we have in terms of GoDaddy's credibility and our reach, that we can do something in this space that others can't, and that it could lift the industry as a whole for these specific domain names.
So domainnames.com, of course, was one of Frank's names. He acquired it in an auction for $370,000. So you kind of had this in your portfolio. At what point did you say, hey, let's use this domain for our new marketplace?
Yeah, so I'm obviously close to that one. I was in the room when Frank bought it at the auction, and I was wondering what we were going to do with it when he acquired it. Unfortunately, at Uniregistry, it was only used for forwarding, and then when GoDaddy acquired it as well, it was only being forwarded. We saw it as an opportunity. When you have an ultra premium domain name like domainnames.com, when you're going into a space that's going to be specific about selling ultra premium domain names, what better way than to do it with an ultra premium domain name like domainnames.com that's highly memorable and ticks a lot of those boxes of being one of those ultra premiums.
So if I'm a seller thinking about listing one of my names here, obviously these are 6-figure and up names that are being listed here. Are they something that, if I go with a traditional broker that does outbound and that sort of thing, are they going to get that same service from GoDaddy, like outbound sales reach?
Yeah, so we are offering that. Is if sellers want that, if they don't want that and they just want the exposure of being on domainnames.com, that's completely fine as well. But yes, we do have a dedicated team to this to prospect and do outreach, whether that's third-party tools externally and internally with our reach inside of GoDaddy, backing it by doing some marketing on individual domain names. And we're really experimenting in certain areas to find out what works best. This is a new platform for us, and it's new territory, but we are going to be looking at what drives the most demand and moves the most domain names. But
sellers do need to agree to exclusivity and for a certain period of time. Is that right?
That is correct. We are looking for exclusivity right now. Every person that we've signed on the seller side, the exclusivity term has been 24 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we have been looking for them to, obviously it's at full exclusivity when we're doing these types of motions where we're putting our resources, time, and effort behind what we're doing. Honestly, these ultra premium domain names aren't necessarily like a lot of the lower value or kind of that average price domain name that the transactions happen quickly. These can take a lot more time and a lot more investment to move.
What are fees for sellers?
It's our standard Afternic piece. So we do require that the domain names are pointed to us. So if those names are pointed to us, it would be 15%.
15%. Okay, got it. And I know at launch there are about 100 names. I'm just looking through it right now, seeing new names and such. But can you give me some updated stats here?
We're about 160 names, and I think we have some more coming up as well. We've got a lot of early demand. We are keeping it as a curated marketplace for ultra premium domain names. We've had a lot of people reach out and we've kind of had to define what an ultra premium domain name is to be able to be on there. But we do want to keep it with that curated inventory so it doesn't get diluted. And when people are looking for that type of domain name, that they can find it and they're discoverable.
Ultra premium and defining it, that's an interesting thing because, everyone thinks they have an ultra premium domain and everyone calls it that. I mean, how are you defining it?
Yeah, it's interesting. Just at NamesCon last week, we kind of heard a lot of people with different perspectives on what ultra premium means. The way that we're looking at it is that the domain is most likely going to have a sales price in that six-figure range or above, of course.
Okay. All right. That's simple enough, right? You think it's worth at least, GoDaddy thinks it's worth at least six figures.
Exactly. And domain names, as we know, they're very unique and there could be a lot of subjective kind of influence that can be put into them. So we do look at a lot of different things when considering the inventory that's going to be inside of domainnames.com and what we're taking on.
So. Sure. Okay. That's an interesting way of looking at it too, because you're not specifying the top level domain, but obviously that matters, right? There's a lot of AI on here in addition to .com, but there is a .net here, btc.net, which is obviously a very valuable .net.
Yeah. So at first we kept it to try and just be .com and .ai, but we've had a lot of people reach out to us with ultra premium inventory that would obviously have a sales price above that $100,000 price range. Singleletter.org, btc.net. There's some really good ones that deserve to be in that category as well.
So on the investor conference call, the GoDaddy investor conference call for Q3, the executives actually, Aman Bhutani, called out domainnames.com because he talked about the use of AI to create projects that otherwise would have been on the back burner because, how do you get development resources and that sort of thing on the inside? So talk to me about how this was developed.
Yeah, absolutely. So GoDaddy has an initiative to get to 70% of all code written by AI. AI is definitely an accelerant to be able to help us move faster and quicker. With domainnames.com, we did use AI to help code the platform, help generate the logos that are on there, which previously things like this might have taken a lot longer for us to launch. This allows us to iterate and do things much quicker. So something that may have taken a lot of resources and time previously and maybe taken a year to launch, we can do it in a much shorter time span. And then we can iterate off of it once we get feedback and make changes.
Got it. All right. So let's shift gears again. That's domainnames.com. There's a link on there if anyone wants to submit their ultra premium domains. Again, six figures and up sale price. I know everyone thinks their baby is the best, but keep that in mind before you submit your names. I want to talk about Afternic and your sales team. I find in general, Afternic's brokers. So I have multiple types of landers that I use on Afternic. Most of them point to Afternic. A lot of them are the request price landers, and where the inquiries come in, your brokers handle them. I find that a lot of times the brokers are on it. Well, they're always immediately on it as soon as the lead comes in. But then it seems like there's a little bit of a split. Sometimes they're following up 3 days later. Sometimes in one recent case, engagement occurred and the person set a follow-up for, I think, 12 or 14 days later, that sort of thing. So help me understand how the team works, how it handles these leads, and what we should expect as sellers.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to take a bit of a step back there, Lead Center itself, obviously that came over from Unit Registry. We had a lot of transparency. And I think that it gives sellers the visibility to be able to see what they're doing, and it builds trust to be able to kind of see the motions that the sales reps are taking. A lot of domain investors are handling their portfolio on their own, and they entrust us as Afternic to be their sales team. So to be able to give them transparency and see what we're doing as a sales team is highly important to build that trust aspect that we're handling them correctly. So now when we're looking at how the leads come in, we cast a wide net, especially on our request price lander, to try and collect as many leads as possible from everywhere in the world. We do have an advanced lead scoring system that routes leads into reps with certain ways that they should be handled. For instance, we look at location, how they respond on the post-inquiry survey, if they've interacted with us in the past, just to name a few of the attributes that we look at. Depending on how these attributes get filled out and trickled down to our sales team, those leads will get prioritized. And the ones that are going to have the highest opportunity of likeliness of closing are going to be the ones that the sales team are going to put the most focus on. All of the leads will get touched. They'll all get handled. But if a seller has 100 leads, they're going to want to make sure that the ones that have the best chance out of those 100 leads are going to get the most attention. And that's kind of how we've structured what we do to try and make sure that we're giving as much attention to those most leads that are going to have the highest likely of closing into a sale.
So essentially you're kind of, I use the word triage here, right? Where the seller has so many leads to work, they're going to work the highest likelihood to close. And that makes sense. Although we as sellers, of course, don't see your lead scoring. We don't see what they're dealing with. And couldn't that also differ between broker, like in which domains they're working with? Like if it gets assigned to one broker and they happen to have a lot of better leads?
Yeah, so we do have a process that the sales reps are to follow, when they should follow up, how often they should follow up and make touches. And that all changes once you get engagement. Just to kind of give a little bit of a backstory here, when I worked at Uniregistry and I was leading the sales team for Uniregistry, I thought that there was no better sales team in the industry than Uniregistry's. By bar none, if you ask me what was the best thing that we had, was our sales reps were the best in the industry. So when we got acquired by GoDaddy, it was very interesting to see that their team was very talented, that they were just doing it slightly different. So we had the opportunity to kind of combine our sales team and obviously the product as well to kind of really build a really strong platform and team out there. One of the things that I noticed with GoDaddy is that they had a very strong structure of how they do things. They had a cadence built of expectations on how to handle leads. They had training that was guided on how to properly go through call flow. And that's one thing that we incorporated as a team. Uniregistry was very good at follow-up. We never let anything go. And we brought some of those aspects into Afternic. But just to kind of circle back there, because you had mentioned previously, you saw a sales rep had gotten engagement on a lead and then there was no follow-up for 12 days on it. Once engagement happens, that's where things change. It could be, I need to go and talk to a certain person in my company and I'm not going to hear back until 12 days later. And you don't want to be overly aggressive. There is a tactic of handling a lead right. So once that engagement occurs, it can change and there's not an expected cadence because it can go multiple different angles.
Interesting. Okay. I wonder if there's maybe one thing that could be, I don't see when that person's set a follow-up. And so, I wonder if maybe that's a way. And again, I do appreciate Lead Center. It used to be we were flying blind on this, as Afternic customers. So I do want to say, I appreciate having that there. I think maybe if we know that, hey, this is when the next contact's going to occur, that might build a little bit more of that trust and transparency.
You can see this before. I think there's multiple things that we can do. We've gotten some feedback on Lead Center on being even more transparent and getting even more information in there that we've looked into doing in the past. And I think you're right. We can give even more transparency there.
And then is there kind of an SLA? Like I had one deal where someone agreed to a price and then it looks like the sales purchase link wasn't even sent for 3 days later. Like, is there, and if it's worked by an individual broker, maybe it's the weekend, that sort of thing. And in this deal, by the way, the person never ended up paying, which, strike while the iron's hot. Is there some sort of kind of SLA or requirement on the inside that once someone, submits an offer that's within the range or agrees to a price that they immediately, within 24 hours, you're sending that out, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it can depend. I don't know the specific situation that you're talking about on that one, but I do know my perspective of actually being a broker for many years. And the time between getting an agreement on price and actually sending out the checkout link, there's a process in between there of making sure that the person's funding is set up. Do they have the authority to make the purchase? This should maybe even happen before taking an offer. But if that offer was something that you're accepting, there's a window there where you kind of just want to make sure that everything's ready to go and that they are committed to making that payment before you send out that check.
Yeah. I mean, this is, I think, a $2,000 or $3,000 domain. I doubt there was much going on there, but some feedback then would be, I think it'd be nice as sellers to know that, once this happens, this will happen within this time frame, and again, I get some of the nuance here, as you mentioned, with maybe the person said, follow up with me in 10, 12 days, that sort of thing that I don't see. But you can see how from a seller's perspective, when a lead kind of engagement occurs and then nothing happens for 10 days, how we could be like, what the heck,
Yeah, absolutely. You're wondering what's going on. Are they actually working my lead? And you don't have full transparency and visibility in there. So I can certainly understand that.
One thing I do want to ask too, sometimes I've filled out that lead form, right? Because I was interested in the name. And one thing I do like is I do get long-term follow-up, like 6 months later, hey, have you moved on from this name or are you still interested? Is that something that occurs automatically for all domains?
It does. There are some things that can stop it. Obviously, if somebody opts out from receiving those. But that is something that was brought over from Uniregistry.
Okay.
We had what we call our drip campaign system that worked phenomenally well at bringing old leads back. Just because somebody inquired on it once and they had to sticker shock and the price was too high doesn't mean that down the road they might have thought about it more, got more funding, and their situation has changed. So that's why that's there. And it does perform very well. But it does go out on most leads, yes.
Okay, great. All right. I want you to help listeners sell more names here. So I'm curious if you have any data around how we should be pricing our names, which landers we should use in which circumstances. Lease to own is big, that sort of thing. Tips you have on duration, that sort of thing. So let's dig into some of that.
Gotcha. I feel like we could do a whole episode on that, on what stuff to use with inside of Afternic to try and maximize your revenue and both your sales. But it can really depend on the portfolio that you have, the sell-through rate that you're trying to obtain. With pricing, it's not a stagnant thing. One of the pieces of advice that I would have with pricing is don't change it too frequently. But when you do get certain demand signals, such as an offer, it's a really good time to look at how you'd originally priced it and the signals that you had looked at that time to come up with that price and see if any of those have changed. Have they gone up? For instance, a simple one is looking at TLD count. If you had snapshotted it at the time when you first bought the domain name, has that gone up? Is there more interest in that specific keyword? Has that gone down? Is there less? That's a really kind of good demand signal to look at periodically to see if your names are priced accordingly or if you should be adjusting the price. With landers, typically we would say that anybody that has something that's 2,500 or below is really a good fit for BIN. Those could be impulse purchases. You don't typically need human involvement to make that sale happen. However, recently we did just launch something new, which is on our request price lander. If you have a domain name that's below $2,000, that you would actually be able to see the BIN price at the end of the post-inquiry survey.
Oh, interesting.
That allows you to capture both. You get the lead, but they also see the BIN price, so they can make that immediate purchase if they want to.
Interesting.
Which has been successful. We've got a lot of find names on that. So it is an interesting new feature that we have released.
You said if the price is below 2,000 or 2,500?
2,000.
Okay. So 2,500 and below, use the BIN. So what does NameFind do? What is NameFind using? How does it decide between these?
Yeah, NameFind is experimenting frequently on trying to figure out what is the best landers to use, pricing, and we do share those results when we can. NameFind will set a portion of their portfolio to BIN, but they, for the most part, do use request price lander on anything that's really above 2,500.
Okay, 2,500 is kind of the threshold then. I mean, obviously, NameFind, for those that aren't familiar, is GoDaddy's own portfolio of domains. So I kind of trust that GoDaddy's trying to do the best thing to optimize its revenue there. So if 2,500 is the threshold there, that's something for people to consider. I will say, however, that's a large portfolio, right? And so, depending on what your goals are, it might be different.
I agree.
And then on lease to own, do you recommend, first of all, Do you recommend it on all domains up to a certain dollar amount or everything, or what's your recommendation there?
Yeah, I do recommend it up to it's a threshold of 100,000 at this point. I do recommend it, and it depends on your tolerance for cancellations. If you're looking at the term length, if you have a 60-month term length, the amount that the buyer has to invest in the name initially is fairly small. It's easier for them to walk away from it. The smaller that is, the less cancellation you're going to have. We've kind of found with NameFind that the sweet spot is probably between 24 months and 36 months, where you have enough investment from a buyer where they've got skin in the game, for lack of a better term, that they're not going to walk away from and be serious about their purchase, and that'll minimize the cancellation rate. We do feel it works for all domains. A lot of sellers that we've worked with on the ones that are higher priced, they like to have a lower term rate, just so that there is even more of an investment by the buyer on that particular domain name on higher value assets. So.
One thing that people have been asking for, speaking of skin in the game, is down payments. Is that something you're considering?
I do know that it is something that's being considered and worked on and being tested, and as well as looking at considering LTO above 100K as well.
What about on duration? When you go from 12 to 13 months and 24 to 25 months, there's a little bit extra fee that GoDaddy collects and then effectively splits it with the seller, right? It reduces the commission. Do you recommend, instead of setting them for 12 months, setting them for 13, instead of 24, setting them for 25?
I do, actually. We do see that a lot of people do check out at that rate, and it does reduce the commission amount for the seller.
Yeah.
So it can work. It is a way of being able to just display it differently. A buyer does have the option of reducing the term amount if they want to, but if they want to move forward to 13 or to the 25, they can do that. And I know even with NameFind, we have tested that as well.
Yeah, I talked to a large investor the other day who said about half of the people stick with 13 when it's set at 12. And even though it's an extra month and ends up costing more, like the actual payments are higher, they just don't bother to, slide the slider, that sort of thing. So
that's correct.
So good thing to check there. And then is Boost under your purview as well?
It is, yes. And Boost is under part of what we sell to sellers. So it is, yes.
Okay. Any updates on that? I know there was early data around it could increase your sales up to 10%, that sort of thing. I'll say as a seller, I see that number. I'm not too enthused, but then I look at the big benefit to me would be the email campaigns, but there's no information on how many of your names will be included in those, how often will they go out, that sort of thing. So I guess, are there any updates or anything that you would say people should consider when thinking about Boost?
No, I absolutely think Boost does work. We experimented with before launching it with on NameFind and how we can utilize Boost to move more domains, and that's where those numbers came from, to be able to provide data behind it. Now, I do understand that sellers, we've gotten the feedback of how can I get more insight into seeing the visibility that Boost does. I don't have any updates on that, unfortunately, but I am a firm believer that by enabling Boost, you will see an additional boost in sales and then ultimately in your overall revenue as well.
Okay. And one final thing, there's been a lot of chatter on X primarily about GoValue, right? And GoValue is GoDaddy's appraisal system. It's been around for a while. I use it on the buy side. I find it to be extremely helpful when I'm looking through expired domain inventory, even if I don't agree with the price, just to, you've got 100,000 names you're looking through. I've got to just rank stack them somehow because I can't look at all of them. But I hear from a lot of people who are like, this is hurting our sales because someone does the GoDaddy appraisal and it says it's worth $20,000 when it's a six-figure name, things like that. What's the status of GoValue? Has it been updated? Will it be updated?
Yeah, we've certainly got a lot of feedback on GoValue recently. I think the launch of domainnames.com has sparked some renewed.
Sure, because some of these names don't show up as six-figure names, right?
Yeah, especially a lot of the .ai's, they come in and low prices. It hasn't been updated in a while. It can take a long time for us to get the GoValue system updated with new data and to go through the process of updating it. I can share that we are working on updating the tool right now. We've tested a few different things. I don't have any timeline of when it might be updated, but I do know we are looking into it specifically with the ultra premium domain names and getting some feedback there. We know that it doesn't do a great job with higher value ones. It does a good job on the kind of average sale price, that 2 to 5, and even once you get up into the 10 to 15 range, it does do a good job there. And I think it gives a good data point to be able to use. But it does need some work on how we can properly value those more ultra premium domain names. So we are looking at making some improvements to it.
I think one thing too is a lot of people, even domain investors, hone in on this when it's above 25,000. It says above 25,000, and they just anchor on that. You're saying my name's worth 25,000. Maybe even changing the verbiage around that to say like high value, right? This is too high for us. It's a premium domain. We can't value it with our system. That sort of thing. That might be one tweak that could help.
Yeah, I think that's valuable feedback. Once you get into those higher value sales, there's not as many as them. We're hoping to have an influence on that with domainnames.com and being able to lift the market up and as an industry as a whole. But there isn't as many data points with those sales as there is on the kind of those average ones that sell in those ranges. But I think that is good feedback that we could take to the team and have a look at.
All right. Well, Wade, that's all I had. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about today?
Yeah, with the domainnames.com in general and what we're trying to do there, we are having a dedicated team work on it. And when I came over to GoDaddy, I just kind of thought GoDaddy was a bit of a black box. We didn't have much exposure to the people that work there. Well, we have some people that have 10, 15 years of experience. They're going to be working on this platform and handling the leads and working them. They live and breathe domain names. This is their passion. They're very passionate about it. When they're reading a book, it's usually to help them sell more domain names. When they're listening to blogs, it's typically to help them sell to more, or podcasts. It's typically to help them understand the industry better and help them sell domain names. So I think we have a really passionate team that's involved with this project, and we're really excited to see what it can do for the industry.
All right. Well, people can check that out. It's easy to remember, domainnames.com. Wade, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
My guest this week has been Wade Smith. He is the Director of Aftermarket Sales at GoDaddy. That's a wrap on this week's Domain Name Wire podcast. You can listen to all previous episodes at dnw.com/podcast or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening.